The Lord be with you.
And with your spirit.
A reading from the Holy Temple, from the Holy Gospel according to Matthew.
Glory to you.
Now, the reason I said temple was because temple was on my mind. Because this passage comes right after Jesus has cleansed the temple, after he overthrew the money changers and so on. So this comes right after, as the Pharisees are very upset. Jesus had gone into the temple and was teaching, when the chief priests and the elders of the people came to him and said, "What authority have you for acting like this? Who gave you this authority?" "And I," replied Jesus, "will ask you a question, only one. If you tell me the answer to it, I will then tell you my authority for acting like this. John's baptism, where did it come from, heaven or man?" And they argued it out this way among themselves. "If we say from heaven," he will retort, "then why did you refuse to believe him? But if we say from man, we have the people to fear, for they all hold that John was a prophet." So their reply to Jesus was, "We do not know." And he retorted, "Nor will I tell you my authority for acting like this." The Gospel of the Lord.
Praise to you, Lord Jesus Christ.
So Balaam, the seer man who had been called and who failed in his task of cursing the Israelites, but rather prophesied great things for them, we have two of his four prophecies for Israel in today's reading. Both of them point to the future, and the church has interpreted them always as pointing to the immediate future, but also to the distant future. So the first oracle he gives, "How fair your tents, O Jacob, how fair your dwellings, Israel, like valleys that stretch from afar," and so on and so on. "A hero arises from their stock. He reigns over countless peoples. His king is greater than Agag. His majesty is exalted." So you can see from that it could be a prophecy of Jesus, but scholars say it could also be a prophecy of Solomon, but fulfilled in Jesus. And then the second one, "I see him, but not in the present. I behold him, but not close at hand. A star from Jacob takes leadership. A scepter arises from Israel." Once again, that can be interpreted in the light of Jesus, who is, of course, the one who is the star and has the scepter of the sign of power and authority. Scholars tell us this could also refer to David. We don't know. But the point is that there's somebody coming from Israel who's going to be great, who's going to be greater than any other king, whose majesty will be exalted, who will have the star of Jacob and the scepter in his hand. "I see him," Balaam says, "but not in the present. I behold him, but not close at hand." It took hundreds of years before this was fulfilled in Jesus. Hundreds of years. Now, if we say a prophecy, or if we hear a prophecy, we want it to be fulfilled, well, tomorrow for the latest. As St. Peter told us in the second Sunday of Advent, remember this, he says, "To the Lord, a day is like 1,000 years. 1,000 years like a day." God's time and our time are two totally different times, totally different. God deals with infinity. And so these prophecies are fulfilled, coming to their fullness, their fulfillment in Jesus, who was hundreds of years after they were made. Well, quite a few hundred years, maybe even, I don't want to frighten you, but maybe even 1,000 years, or 1,500 years before they were fulfilled in Jesus. The point is, God has a plan. And that plan unfolds. And it doesn't unfold according to our time. It doesn't unfold according to human time. It unfolds to God's time. Now, I do think that sometimes, I don't know, this might be giving human beings too much power, that sometimes we slow down God's plan a bit by not cooperating with the Lord. But God's plan will unfold, regardless. God's plan will unfold. And it has unfolded over all these millennia. It has unfolded. Jesus will come again. The early Christians, some of them anyway, thought that would happen at any time. We hear St. Paul talking to the Corinthians and telling them, we hear some of y'all are not working and interfering with other people's work. And some, it is said that they weren't working because they thought Jesus was coming back, so why work? Well, 2,000 years later, he hasn't come yet. God's time, our time, two different times. But we are people who know that God's plan is unfolding. And God's plan will come about in God's time. And therefore, we are called in this Advent season to remember this and to stay awake, to be alert, because it could be any time, God's time. But it is God's plan that is unfolding. We are called to wait and to trust God.